Primetime Fantasy Football is brought to you by Next Level Radio. Head to nextlevelradioonline.com for past episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football and the Showcast, plus Celebrity Guest Spotlight. Now on to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
People I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, cause we're the mansion on my land. Full jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand. The way I live is oh so fast. Ain't got you ladies and prime time is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of prime time.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright.
Welcome to week number 14 of Primetime Fantasy Football presented by Next Level Radio. I am Adam Gorey, joined by Joe Webster and Steve Richards. How are you two gentlemen doing this week?
Good.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hopefully you guys, I know for a fact Steve at least made the playoffs in at least one of his leagues. Joe, have you made playoffs in any of your leagues?
I am 2 out of 4, so 50%. One of them I'm seeded first. The other one I am seeded 6th of 7.
Okay, so listen to 50% of the things Joe tells you to do.
Yeah,
that's right.
2 weeks in a row, by the way, Joe, I think I listened to you for a quarterback move and it didn't pan out. So I don't want to put you down on the podcast, but yeah.
But that's exactly what you're doing.
That's okay.
Right.
We get some right.
You don't give me credit for the weeks that I've helped you out, but I understand how that goes.
No, it's usually the ones that you get right that I don't listen to. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
We get some right, we get some wrong. It's not perfect science here. But anyway, Joe, I believe you had a Twitter question from one of your followers that we wanted to start things out with this week.
Yeah. One of the things he talked about, I think he's in a pretty shallow league. I've talked to him multiple times over Twitter before, and he asked a lot of questions. And his question this week was, you have to start 3. So, Steve, I'm going to start with you. He's got LaFell, Benjamin, McCoy, and Rashad Jennings. So, basically, you have to sit one of those guys.
3 out of 4.
Yes.
Well, it's easy if Rashad Jennings doesn't play.
Yeah, sure.
But if Rashad Jennings does play, I like the 2 running backs. McCoy's coming on strong, and then Rashad Jennings has a great matchup with Tennessee. So I guess it comes down to the receivers, and I think I like Brandon LaFell.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with the quarterbacks and comparing Tom Brady with Cam Newton. And LaFell's been reliable. He didn't have many catches and many targets, but 2 of his catches went for touchdowns last week. So he's been consistent, whether it's been with yardages or getting in the end zone. So I like LaFell going into this week over Benjamin.
And you're obviously taking into account McCoy's matchup against the Seahawks. You feel still pretty confident that he'll be better than the 2 receivers?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think
okay.
He's a guy that you don't. He's a bit of the matchup proof. He's getting back to his old self at this point.
Okay, Adam, who are you sitting out of those 4?
Like Steve said, if Jennings doesn't play, that's easy, clearly. But and like you asked with McCoy, to use your words or your future words, don't get cute being the first round of the playoffs. So you're sticking McCoy, Jennings, and I'm actually going to go Benjamin because of the fact that targets are there, and he's also on a list this week. So I'd be going against what I'm going to say later if I didn't pick him over LaFell. I just think he's the number 1 target over there. So he has. I'm just playing the odds at this point. I think he gives me better odds to get more yards and a touchdown than LaFell would.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll be the tiebreaker. I do agree. I was just trying to play a little devil's advocate with McCoy. I agree that even with his tough matchup this week, out of those 4, he's the starter. But I'm going to go with Brandon LaFell over Benjamin, and it's for the exact reason. It's for the exact reason Steve gave. I don't trust Cam Newton at all. The targets are there, so would it shock me if he were a better this week? No, I just feel like LaFell has been more consistent, and when you're going in the playoffs, I think I'd rather play it a little safe, and I want to go. So I would sit Benjamin this week.
That's fair. Fair enough. But I mean, obviously, I would say with those guys, it's hard to go wrong. I think you got a pretty good chance of hitting some points either way.
If if you guys want to play a game, I have one wide receiver spot and one flex spot. And I have Brandon Marshall, Brandon LaFell, Golden Tate, DeAndre Hopkins, and Frank Gore.
I know this is the keeper league, so I can't give my opinion since I play you.
Yeah, that's about right.
All right, so Steve, I'm sorry. Give that to me one more time.
I got one receiver spot and one flex spot. And I have, what did I say, 4 receivers and Frank Gore. So I have Frank Gore. His only option would be the flex. And then I have receivers are Brandon Marshall, Brandon LaFell, Golden Tate, and DeAndre Hopkins. And obviously any of them could go in receiver or flex.
I think I'm definitely I think I it's hard to sit DeAndre Hopkins after what he did last week.
Yeah.
But it's tough between Golden Tate. I still think I may go with him. And I think Brandon Marshall. I'd still probably go Brandon Marshall, but you do want to kind of look out. I read something online today. I believe it was a Chicago beat writer, wrote something. I can't remember if I saw it on Twitter or somewhere else, where they basically said that Brandon Marshall's still dealing or has a lingering ankle issue, and it still isn't 100% healed. So I'd check to see. I haven't checked to see yet if he practiced today. If he's practicing today, even though it's probably just a walkthrough, if he was on the field today, I'd feel more comfortable probably going with him. And so I'd probably use 2 receivers in that situation.
Yeah, I think 2. But and then to mash up my mind, Gore is playing Oakland, and they are the worst fantasy defense.
Yeah, but he has Hyde breathing down his neck.
That's true.
Yeah, that is tough.
Play him. Pick up.
I'd have to. I'm going to try to do a little bit of research on that. I'm going to try to give you a better answer. Right now, off the top of my head, I still think off the top of my head I'd go the 2 receivers, but because of his matchup against Oakland, that's definitely.
Who are the 2 you have in there now, Steve?
I haven't touched it. I still have it from last week, which was
it.
LaFell and Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall's Thursday, by the way, against the Cowboys.
Yes.
That's the other thing. That's the other part.
Yeah, but you know what? I wouldn't worry about. Both of those teams played last Thursday, so they've had a full 7 days rest.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good work, Joe.
Thank you. I feel like I contribute, so I'm going to go to bed now.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the meat of the show here, and let's get into the highs and lows. We'll start off recapping last week's what I thought would have been a shoo-in for at least 17 or 18 points. Tony Romo, dead wrong, 5.8 points. Broke his 38-game streak, I think it was, of a touchdown pass. He plays Chicago Thursday night, like we just mentioned, and both teams are on a full week of rest. So I don't think that plays into effect. But I think one of you have him on a list later. Yeah, Joe, he's on one of your lists, so we'll skip him. We'll talk about him later. And then I had Jarvis Landry. Give myself a yellow because he only had 6.8 points in a standard league, but if you're in a PPR league, like I think Steve had mentioned last week, and even Joe, he's PPR gold, 8 catches, so that got you 14.8. Playing against Baltimore, who Phillip Rivers put up about 30 points on almost. So, Joe, how do you feel about Landry this week?
I like him. I think you gave him a yellow because we normally give a green light for over 10 points. But we all talked about Landry probably was somebody you weren't starting in a standard league, and so he's really more of just a PPR guy right now. And if that's the case, that was a green light and it was a good call by you. And I like him a lot this week to be really again a factor in the PPR because Baltimore's good against the run, but they are really bad. They're secondary, so they're going to give up some passes, and I think Steve has a list, has Lamar Miller, and I'll talk about why he's low on Lamar Miller later. But I think Jarvis Landry is going to put up very similar numbers next week.
Yeah, I keep him in wide receiver 2 territory. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I completely agree. You can pretty much expect the same thing out of him every week, which is good to get consistency, especially if you're in a PPR and your consistency is 14 points. And if he gets you a touchdown, that's just bonus. But he's been pretty reliable. He gets a lot of targets every week now. And he's come on pretty strong here late in the season, so he's a good pick. As far as me, for my highs last week, missed one and hit one. I had Denard Robinson, who went for 5.4, 8.4 at a PPR. He only had 44 yards and rushing and 10 yards receiving. This week they play Houston, so that'd be another type of matchup. They're at home against Houston. And then I also had Brandon LaFell, who was a green. Like we mentioned a little bit earlier, he had 2 touchdowns. He only had 5 catches for 38 yards, but when you have 2 touchdowns, that's going to go ahead and carry you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
He had 20 points. Yeah, he had 20 points in a PPR. Still didn't work out because I had Hopkins on the bench. And
but he
so
scored more than Tate. I just want to.
Yeah,
those were the
sure.
2 guys you gave me. You didn't throw Hopkins in there.
That's great, fantastic. They're at San Diego on Sunday night. So, Adam, I have Denard Robinson's at Houston and Brandon LaFell's at Sunday night. How are they going to do this week?
I think. Robinson. I think you've seen his production go down a little bit. Houston's kind of middle of the pack against running backs, but he's getting all the touches. So I just think you still got to run with him, especially being the playoffs. You're, like I said earlier, you're kind of just playing the odds at this point and putting the guys in there that you think you can get you the most points. He's had 5 points the last 2 weeks, but before that he was in double digits for 4 straight weeks. So I'm not too worried there. I'm still sticking with him. And then LaFell, you guys have both mentioned you like him over Benjamin. I'm not sure I like him more than Benjamin this week, but I still like him as a wide receiver too. And we've kind of mentioned that he's pretty much Brady's number one, number one wide receiver, I guess, at this point. Edelman still gets looks and whatnot, but not as much as he did last year at all. And LaFell's really come on strong late in the season.
Yeah, I agree with everything he said. With Denard Robinson, he's starting to come back a little down to earth. I was not high on him at the beginning and then had to eat some crow when he had a few good weeks in a row. I just don't know, depending on what you've got on your situation, on your team going into the playoffs, how comfortable you feel starting him after the last few weeks. But if that's one of your best options, especially, before we started recording tonight, Steve and I were having a quick conversation about some of the issues at running back this week, and I seem to own every single one of them in one of the leagues that I'm in. So if I had Denard Robinson, I don't. I'd probably have to get him into my lineup. But this week you may have some better options. And I think I like LaFell a lot. He seems to be one of Brady's favorite targets. And I think against San Diego, it's going to be a lot of offense that night. So I think he's safe to put in your lineup as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my highs last week, I wasn't very good on it. One, because of injury. I really felt like Andre Ellington. I mean, I've been on this guy since the preseason, and I am slowly stepping off of the Andre Ellington bandwagon. Hasn't been doing well. Now, last week he did get injured, so I understand that. But he's got a hip pointer, and it's supposed to be kind of serious. And as of right now, he didn't practice today, but that's pretty normal. Even when he was healthy, he wasn't practicing on Wednesdays. But he's going to be a game-time decision. I'm not sure what time the game starts, but Arizona, it's probably going to be a 4:30 game. So depending on what your roster looks like and what you have for the playoffs, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to trust that this week. And then the other one I had was Ryan Tannehill, and I was pretty positive that Ryan Tannehill was going to be a pretty good quarterback against the Jets.
Ryan Tannehill.
And that was Ryan Tannehill. I'm sorry. It was that. I don't know how much you guys watched of that game. It was awful.
0.
It was boring.
You are lucky you didn't watch that game.
It was hard to watch.
It was. I could not believe. I mean, Miami has actually been in some very competitive games. I mean, they almost beat Green Bay, and you can argue probably should have beat Green Bay. There's a couple of games this year. Yeah, exactly. They have been a really good team, and then they go against the Jets, and I figured it was gonna be a blowout. And the Jets. I mean, I think the Jets tried to lose because they're going for a playoff, and they almost couldn't even do that.
Home dog at night. That's what it is.
Yeah. So Andre Ellington, I'm not sure how you guys feel about him with a game time decision, but I'd really like to get your thoughts on Tannehill because I think that may be a guy that some people are going to be riding into the playoffs. He's got Baltimore this week, which should be another good matchup for him. So we'll start. Adam, what do you think of Ryan Tannehill this weekend?
Well, I think I could be wrong. Isn't he on a list somewhere in the future?
He's on one of mine, yeah.
Okay. So
he is. All right, so let's save that. I apologize.
Foreshadowing.
Tell me. Let's talk about Andre Ellington.
Ellington, yeah, I don't think I'm not very confident he's going to play, and it is a 4:05 game. So, if you want to pick up, what is it, Grimes?
Grice.
Right.
I like him.
Yeah, I mean, he did look pretty good. So if you have him, and maybe you just, kind of hope one of them plays, and it's not a limited thing for Ellington. You hope maybe they just say he's inactive, and you can put Grayson, but
I gotta think you have somebody better. I mean, great. And the other
Yeah,
problem
you're gonna
is
have
they
that
also
something
that's true. It's not.
they have to.
It's not a
And they
great
also picked
matchup
up-
either.
Right, it's a bad matchup, and they also picked up. They signed Michael Bush a couple weeks ago,
Right.
so he could get some carries. To me, it's a situation, and the situation I was telling Steve that I drafted Adrian Peterson in this league, and I have Jennings who missed practice today, Crowell who missed practice today, Ellington who missed practice today. So I mean, half of my team may not even be playing this Sunday.
I think
So-
Crowell will be. You're probably gonna end up running Crowell and Jennings if they play.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about
Those
that.
are the-
It's just the fact they missed today.
Yeah, I
worries.
mean, if we were doing our red, yellow, green scale for injuries, Ellington's a red right now for me. Even if
I
he
agree.
plays,
He's not
I don't know if I can trust him.
He's not in my lineup, and I don't plan on putting him in there. So
Yeah, Steve, what do you think about Ellington?
I don't think the matchup's that good, and their offense is stagnant. They scored for the first time in like 12 quarters last week. Like they're not any good at, or a touchdown. They're not any good at all on offense right now. So, and
Yeah.
it's a tough matchup. I mean, it's tough to even play him out there, even if he's at what? I guess you have to be at 65% or something to actually play in a game. And if he's just barely making it into a lineup, I'm not sure how confident I am in rolling him out against Kansas City anyway.
Yeah, and
Yep.
and if you're into streaming defenses and they're available, Kansas City's a good play this week, I think, against that Arizona team. If they're available.
Sure.
I think they're picked up in a lot of leagues. So let's go on to this week's picks and what we're doing for highs, lows. Normally, our highs and lows, especially the lows, we might put a guy on a low list but be like, you're not going to bench this guy. Well, now that it's the playoffs, what's the point of putting him on this list if you're not going to bench him or start him? So these guys are guys that we think you have to start. Our low list will be guys that we're telling you that we think you should bench them for the week. So I'll start off with the highs, guys that I think you should start. Isaiah Crowell, who Joe just talked about, didn't practice today against the Colts. The Colts are pretty decent just in general of a defense, but they're not stopping anybody, to be honest. He had over twice the amount of touches as Terrence West last week. He's the clear number one now. Colts, like I said, are much easier to run on than Buffalo was last week. I had put on here that Manziel might open things up more, but Manziel's not going to be starting. So I actually think that either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think they're going to have to rely on the run because they've seen that Hoyer can't. They can't rely on Hoyer's arm, so I think they got to go with Crowell being heavy on him. So next up, I have Kenny Stills against Carolina. Over 9 points in each game since Cooks went out. He was tied for the most targets last week. I think Jimmy Graham is going to be more involved. He had 0 targets last week, but I think Stills is still going to see a lot of targets, and Carolina does give up the 9th most points to wide receivers. What do you guys think about Crowell and Stills?
Well, I like the Crowell as long as he's playing. Obviously, Terrence West had a pretty crucial fumble last week, so I think that Crowell has seemed to be the clear-cut number one going forward.
Was called out by Pedden for that too.
Yeah, he was. So I think Crowell, as long as he plays, then I'll be anxious to see. I think the key is going to be, I mean, he missed practice today, which isn't completely uncommon in the middle of the week. Tomorrow and Friday are going to be key. Even though he got called out, if Crowell's unable to practice tomorrow or Friday, West is going to probably be the guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that he missed today makes me worried it's going to be more of a split. But even then, Crowell seems to get a little bit more of the carries down at the goal line, which can help you with a touchdown. And Kenny Stills has just been a monster. He's basically become Brandon Cooks. I mean, he's getting the kind of looks that Brandon Cooks was. And if you have looked forward at New Orleans' playoff schedule for, obviously fantasy playoffs, they've got a pretty nice schedule. So I think Drew Brees is going to have a field day in these next couple games, and Kenny Stills is going to be one of the beneficiaries.
The Crowell one, I think he's a little bit more middle of the pack for me at this moment just because of the injury. You might have a better option at this point, but I don't have any names off the top of my head. So it's not a bad pick. And obviously monitoring the injury is what's going to be important, because I think even if like another guy, if he's another one that plays at 75% or whatever they call it, I think he could be dicey and you might have a better option. So just be on the lookout for that. But Kenny Stills is the option. I mean, that's a great pick. As far as the Saints are concerned, I think he's a better option than Colston at this point. Colston has struggled a little bit, and Kenny Stills has kind of taken the wide receiver vacancy and ran with it, so to speak. So I think that I think Stills is a great pick, and then Crowell's kind of middle of the pack for me.
Yeah, I think Colston's going to be touchdown dependent.
Yeah, that's a good way to categorize it. I think I agree with that. So for me, I have Rashad Jennings first up on my start list. They're playing again Tennessee. As long as he plays, you're going to play him because Tennessee's been a sieve for fantasy running backs. They've given up a touchdown to running backs in each of the last 5 weeks, whether that be on the ground or through the air. And in 2 of those weeks, they gave up 2 touchdowns. And then you throw in a 200-yard performance by Le'Veon Bell. They've given up 100 yards to Arian Foster the first time around they played him. Not last week, but the first time around they gave it up to him. So they've really been struggling against running backs, certainly on the ground, but also through the air, which is exactly what Rashad Jennings does. He's kind of a dual threat kind of guy. I would play him if he plays himself, and I'll just throw in that I would play Andre Williams if Rashad Jennings doesn't play, and Andre Williams takes that number 1 running back duty. He's not as much of a threat out of the backfield, but the way Tennessee gives it up on the ground, you can just go ahead and start Andre Williams with confidence if you have him on your bench as well. The second guy I have is Golden Tate, who is one of the guys that we were just talking about with the people on my roster. They're playing Tampa Bay, who is another bad defense. I just want to make sure that he's in everybody's lineups this week, just kind of a reminder that Golden Tate's still there and he's really good. He gets a lot of targets. Tampa Bay is not good against the pass. So I think there's just going to be plenty of catches for Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate. I think they're going to go all the way around. They're at home in the Georgia, not the Georgia Dome, the Ford Dome, whatever they call that thing. And it's fast there.
Isn't it like
Golden
Ford
Tate,
Field or something like
I think
that?
it is Ford Field, yeah. It's fast in there, and Golden Tate likes to play fast. I think his targets are going to be high, like I mentioned, and I think his yardage is going to be high as well. So we can kick off with Adam. What do you think about Rashad Jennings at Tennessee, and then Golden Tate against Tampa Bay as starters for the fantasy playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, much like Crowell, as long as Jennings plays, I think you got to put him right in there. Like you said, Tennessee's terrible against the run. Then Golden Tate, same thing. I mean, he's going to be getting targets, catches, him and Calvin Johnson. So, yeah, I got to agree with both.
Yep. Not really much to add to what Steve said. The only thing I'm going to disagree with, and he's on one of my lists, because as of right now, I am definitely worried about Jennings. They went out and signed Chris Obignaya this week as well. Part of that maybe because I think they put 4 players on the IR, 2 offensive linemen and 2 defensive linemen. So they had players, they had space available, and they've already been thin at running back. But the fact that Rashad Jennings gets hurt and then they go out and sign a running back makes me a little nervous. So I'm going to disagree with you on Andre.
Today. I don't know if we mentioned that.
Say that again?
He also didn't practice today. I don't know if we mentioned that earlier in the show. You might have.
Who's that?
Jennings, yeah.
Right. Yeah, we did mention that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why if Andre or Jennings doesn't play, despite the matchup, I'm telling you to bench Andre Williams. But I'll get into some specifics later. And the Golden Tate, not much more to add. You guys are right on with that assessment. The guys I'm telling you to start this week, it kind of hurts me to say this because they're from 2 of the teams I dislike the most. But my first one is Tony Romo against Chicago. Chicago's right now is giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. It's a Thursday night game. Generally, we try to stay away from Thursday night games. But as I mentioned before, both teams played last Thursday, so they've had a full week. This isn't a short week for them. And to be honest with you, Tony Romo was embarrassed on Thanksgiving. You know, Adam mentioned the streak of touchdowns he missed or touchdowns in games that he was not able to get against the Eagles. So I think this is a huge game that he wants to come out and play really well, and I think he'll be able to do it against a really bad Chicago secondary. And the other guy is Odell Beckham Jr., who is just becoming a beast right now. He's got 90-plus yards in 5 straight games. He's getting a ton of targets right now, and I think he's going to be a lock to be a top 10 wide receiver. Despite and part of the reason I really think that is because, again, I'm counting on Jennings not playing as much as I hope he does because I have him in a league, and I just don't trust Andre Williams, so I think they're going to have to get it done through the air. So Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be a top 10 wide receiver this week. So I guess we'll start with Adam, Tony Romo, and Odell Beckham. Thoughts?
Odell Beckham, I'm going to agree with just because you got to keep riding the hot hand. I mean, he's been so good. Like you said, 90-plus yards in 5 straight games. Add a touchdown to that gets you 15 points right there in a standard league. Romo, I'm not sure. This is going to be in Chicago, and I don't think that I really just trust him at this point. So he could. I mean, obviously, it's a great matchup, and I could see him putting up some good numbers. But it was a good matchup against the Eagles too. So, and that was a home game. If it's cold in Chicago, I could see them. I could see Chicago winning this game. I believe this falls under the old adage of home dog at night. So, I think if anybody does well or has a bounce back game, it would be Murray. So I don't know what I feel about Romo this week. I just don't know if I can trust him. I don't know if I want to take the chance going into the playoffs. And this does fall into the adage of home dog at night. So, Steve, what do you think about those two?
Yeah, Odell Beckham is an absolute. You got to run him out for as long as he's running out. Even if Jennings does play, I think when Eli Manning's throwing it, he's looking for Odell Beckham at this point, and he's a goldmine for you right now because you probably picked him up in the middle of the year. As far as Romo goes, I'm going to agree with Joe. But as Adam said, the Cowboys are on home dog at night alert, and I convinced myself today that Chicago is going to win this game, but I think it'll be a lot of points. So I think Romo has a chance to score a bunch of points, but Chicago can just score more. I don't mind starting Tony Romo this week. We'll see how he falls in the rankings when they come out.
Yeah, the line moved in Chicago's favor.
In both games, I think you're going to want to pretty much start everyone you got for the most part if they're healthy. I mean, both defenses, and we talked earlier in the year about how Dallas was surprising us with their defense, but as of the last few weeks, they haven't been as good. So I think this game could be a high-scoring game, especially for a Thursday night game.
Yeah, that's true.
Sure. Absolutely.
So let's go on to last week's low results. I had Doug Baldwin, only got 2.8 points. Even in a PPR, only got 4.8. 2 catches for 28 yards. Plays the Eagles this week. I'm not sure I trust him again, or along with any of the other Seattle receivers. And then I had Steven Jackson. Gave myself a ready at 18 attempts for 101 yards. All natural there, no touchdown. So he got 10.1 points. Kind of a surprise, especially because he didn't have a great matchup. They play at Green Bay Monday. I just think Green Bay is going to go up big on them, so I don't think Steven Jackson gets 18 attempts again. So I'm not high on either of these guys this week either. Joe, what about you?
No, I unfortunately, I don't think anybody should. If you're in the playoffs, chances are you're not starting Doug Baldwin. And if you are, your team must be stacked everywhere else. So I don't think it really need to talk about him. Steven Jackson, unfortunately, with the way the running back situation is, he's probably going to have to start for some teams. And I'll be honest with you, if you're able to get 10 points out of him at this point in the season, I mean, there's a couple studs that are out there, but if you can guarantee me Steven Jackson gets 10 or 12 points, I'll be happy with it. But I do agree it's a tough matchup. I think they're going to be behind, and that doesn't bode well for the run game of Atlanta. So it's just tough. At this point, as I said, the playoffs, if you've been getting Steven Jackson, I'm pretty sure he's been pretty consistent with double-digit points over the last few weeks. So if he's got you here, you may just have to keep rolling with him, but you're not going to feel good about it.
Yeah, I don't agree with Steven Jackson. I'm agreeing with that he won't do well. If he gets 18 attempts, he could have 20 yards. I mean, Green Bay is not very good against the run, but Steven Jackson is one of those Trent Richardson types where he doesn't get too many yards per carry. Last week was a bit of an anomaly against Arizona. And like you said, Green Bay could go up huge early, and then the Falcons end up throwing it the entire game just to try to catch up.
Yeah, another possible defense streamer. Green Bay.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And then Doug Baldwin, I think we said it last week, and we said it again this week. You just can't trust any of the Seattle wide receivers at this point. Russell Wilson collects all his fantasy points on the ground pretty much, and he even had a pretty good throwing day last week, and it still wasn't Doug Baldwin. I think it was Luke Wilson had a couple big plays, which was fun to watch. I guess slow developing, but you just can't trust any of the wide receivers in Seattle. And hopefully, if you're in the playoffs, like Joe said, you're not starting them. So last week I had Jay Cutler, who ended up with 17.1. That's good for a yellow. Ended up with 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 1 pick at the buzzer that didn't matter. They play, like we said, Dallas on Thursday night. I think I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think it could be a shootout, which means points for everybody, Jay Cutler included. And then Trent Richardson I hit on because you could hit on Trent Richardson every week on a low list. He had 8 carries for 12 yards. Classic Trent Richardson. They're at Cleveland this week, another tough defense, so I don't see Trent Richardson doing any better this week. But we can start with Adam and see what you think about Jay Cutler and Trent Richardson.
Yeah, I'm never high on Trent Richardson, so I don't really need to go into too much detail there. Jay Cutler, I like him this week. I like him to do a little bit better than 17.1, maybe like 18 or 19, possibly even squeaking out an extra touchdown, getting you into those like low 20s.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I agree with both. I don't want to say anything about Trent Richardson. I wouldn't want to put him in any lineup. And Jay Cutler, again, I kind of talked about that just a few minutes ago. I think as long as every player that you have is healthy, maybe the tight end situation is a little different. But however, tight ends have been so bad this year, you're probably going to have to roll with one of them as well. You're probably going to be able to start every single guy in this game. And I do like Jay Cutler. I think both him and Tony Romo are in for big nights. My list, I was low on. I hit on one and missed on the other. I had Crowell, who we already talked about. But last week, 17 attempts, but only 29 yards and 15 yards on one catch. West wasn't much better at all, but I just knew against that tough defense in Buffalo, he wasn't going to be able to do much. And then, so we already talked about him, so we'll go right into Jeremy Maclin. My big fear last week is I really think that I should say that Matthews was becoming Sanchez's favorite target, which still may be a case, but Jeremy Maclin was absolutely involved last week, and it was good to see. And he had 108 yards on 8 receptions. He did lose a touchdown to Matthews. He scored on a nice play, but it was nice to see Maclin becoming the number one target again. This week he has a really tough matchup against Seattle, and I don't know, unless you're really stacked at wide receiver, you're probably going to have to roll him out there because he's played like a number one wide receiver all year long, despite the tough matchup. So I'll start with Steve this time. Steve, where are you at on Jeremy Maclin this week?
Yeah, this is going to be a nice little wake-up game for the Eagles' passing attack, and that includes Maclin and Sanchez and Matthews and everybody. I don't see much of anything. If the Eagles are going to win this game, it's going to have to be on the ground. So I don't, like you said, you nailed it. You're going to start Maclin, but I'm not going to be confident about it. You're going to have to hope for a touchdown or something to come.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, you guys both said it. It's going to be one of those things. And surprisingly, the over-under is almost 50, which I thought it would be a little bit lower than that. It's at like 48.5. I thought it would be in the low 40s.
That's a Birds over-under.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, you could squeak out a touchdown in there for him, but
yeah,
it seems like Matthews has been getting a lot of touchdowns coming from Sanchez. But, I mean, like you guys said, you kind of have to throw him out there. I'm kind of curious. I don't think he's on any of the lists. Would you throw Matthews out there?
Yeah, people. I mean, I think they thought that Matthews is Sanchez's favorite target is real. So
yeah,
if I have, I would put Matthews out if I'm going to put Maclin out.
Yeah, I'm still playing both of them because that offense can still put up yards. You know, if not score. I mean, you might see that. You might see Cody Parkey have another, big game this week. I just think that offense can at least still put up some yards, and even if they're not performing well, you've seen them get the yards through the air, and it's just going to be an interesting game to see that hot Seattle defense or the relatively hot Eagles offense. But let's get on to this week's picks. These are guys that we think you should bench. I'll start off with Martavis Bryant at Cincinnati. He only had 4 targets last week. Big Ben threw 58 passes. I'm no math whiz, but that's
Roethlisberger threw 58 passes last week.
Yeah, I'm no math whiz, but that's not a great average there percentage. So also a tough defense. Cincinnati gives up the second least to wide receivers. Seattle being the first, FYI. He's really cooled off the past few weeks, so I'm going to bench him. Colin Kaepernick is one that I'm also going to bench, and you might see him play Oakland and get all excited and giddy because it's the Raiders. They're actually pretty average against quarterbacks. Like I said, it might look like a tasty matchup on paper, but Cap's been unreliable this year. I think this is more of a ground game domination and a defensive domination, not quite through the air, and the over-under on that's only 41, so that kind of shows that it doesn't look like it might even be a higher scoring game anyway, so that doesn't spell well for Caps. So, Joe, what do you think about those two?
Yeah, I agree. As somebody who missed the playoffs in our keeper league, the three of us, because I had Colin Kaepernick, and he wasn't the main reason. There's definitely a couple other bad draft choices I made, but he was really bad and was, I think, the main reason why my team suffered this year. So I don't trust him even against an Oakland defense. And I like your Martavis Bryant. He's had some solid weeks, but Cincinnati is good. And for whatever reason, I really think Cincinnati is going to win pretty handedly in this game. I think the run game for Cincinnati gets back on track with Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard this week. And I think, Andy Dalton's going to be Andy Dalton, but I think A.J. Green's good enough to get, a couple yards and possibly a touchdown. And I think Cincinnati wins this game easily. So the only thing I could say is maybe Bryant gets some garbage time because I think it's going to be that kind of win for Cincinnati. But I wouldn't feel confident about putting him in my lineup for your playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. I think Martavis Bryant is completely boomer bust, and he's been a lot more bust. So it's going to be tough to trust somebody like that going into the playoffs. And I would think that you certainly have a better option going into the playoffs if you're in the playoffs than Martavis Bryant at wide receiver. And then Kaepernick, like you said, he's just really inconsistent, and it's tough to trust him. Again, trust going into the playoffs. You'd like to put somebody in that you can actually, trust to score points and you know what you're going to get from him. Kaepernick seems like a Hail Mary swing. And, you don't really need a Hail Mary going into the playoffs because you're in the playoffs. You should be a good team anyway. So I wouldn't start Kaepernick or Bryant, so I agree with you both. And then for my bench guys, I started with Lamar Miller against Baltimore. I don't know how many other option you'd have than Lamar Miller at running back, just because of the running back situation. But the Ravens are the worst fantasy defense against wide receivers and the best fantasy defense against running backs, meaning they don't give it up to running backs and they do give it up to wide receivers. So that doesn't work out well for Lamar Miller, who happens to be a running back. And I think it's just going to be tough sledding this week for them. So I think if they're going to win the game, it's going to be through the air. And I like their passing attack better than their ground attack. And then I also had Manziel on this list, but Yahoo went ahead because Yahoo wrote an article that said he was going to be a top 10 quarterback this week, and that was completely ludicrous, and I lost my mind. So I immediately put Johnny Manziel on this list without even looking at who they were playing. Turns out it was the Colts. It also turns out that Coach Pettin decided to start Hoyer instead of Manziel because he hasn't completely lost his mind. Hashtag North Penn Knights for life. So I have another guy for you, and it's Ben Roethlisberger. They are at Cincinnati, like we mentioned with Martavis Bryant. A couple numbers for you. Cincinnati gives up less yards. They give up more yards at home than on the road, which the game is in Cincinnati. They give up like 15 more yards at home on the road, but their splits are 6 touchdowns and 9 picks. And then Roethlisberger, while on the road, he's thrown for like 600 less yards, and he's played the same amount of games on the road as he has at home. And his splits are 20 touchdowns and 3 picks at home, but 6 touchdowns and 5 picks on the road. So
wow.
He's not much of a road quarterback, and
I guess those two
Bengals
6
are a road
touchdown
defense.
those 2 6-touchdown games must have been at home.
Yeah, I would think so, considering he only has 6 total.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's more of a home guy, and so are the Bengals defense, and it's in Cincinnati. So I just don't like the matchup, and I would bench Ben Roethlisberger this week. So we're gonna start with Adam, so Joe can roll into his. But I have Lamar Miller and edited from Johnny Manziel into Ben Roethlisberger to bench this week.
Yeah, I love that Roethlisberger pick. Those are some good stats you had there with the splits. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah, next level.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you there. Manziel, start him. Let's see. Start him, because after halftime, he'll probably be back in the game anyway.
Football.
Lamar Miller, I agree with everything you're saying, but I don't know. I have a hard time benching him, so I'm still gonna play him if I have him. But I could see.
It's tough, man.
I could see him putting up a stinker this week. Joe, what about you?
I agree with the Lamar Miller. If you're in a situation where he's been the guy who's got you there, obviously you may have to play him, but it's going to be a tough road this week against Baltimore. And the stats you gave about Ben were great. I mean, I think that was a really good pick, and the fact that you're able to back him up with stats is even better. I mean, Adam just sounds like he's like, well, I guess he doesn't look good this week. So I really like your stats that you pulled out there. Make this podcast a little more professional. But then here I go. We're supposed to pick 2, and I only picked 1 because I wanted to pick Lamar Miller and just did not really think ahead to
Talk
pick
about
anybody else.
professional.
So, talk about professionals. I'm leaving it up to Steve with that. He just classed it up with those stats.
You
So,
want to put Johnny Manziel?
guy-
You can have Johnny Manziel from Steve's list.
I'll take Johnny Manziel. Actually, I kind of agree with you. Start him because he'll play in the after halftime, and I still probably won't do well. So, yeah. So I went with Andre Williams, and again, this is in the assumption that I'm not sure yet exactly what Jennings is going to do, but I think there's going to be a lot of people when Jennings goes out, people are just going to automatically think Andre Williams. You plug him in this weekend because of his matchup against the worst defense against running backs, which is Tennessee. And I'm here to tell you, I would not rush so fast. When Andre Williams was playing when Jennings was out, he really never did anything that good. Since Jennings was out, his best rushing attack was 66 yards rushing. Even against Atlanta in week 5, who is a very bad team against the run, one of the worst, they've been battling for the top spot all year as the worst rush defense. He had 20 rushes for 65 yards. And, that week was saved with a touchdown, but his rushing numbers are not good, and I just don't believe he's that good of a running back. So if Jennings plays, do not just consider it an automatic that Andre Williams is the top 15 running back. If that's all you have left because you handcuff Jennings, go for it. But I'm going to be the 3rd time you've heard it tonight. Don't get cute. Ride the guys who got you to the playoffs. And if you've got, for example, I'll ask you guys right now, if you have Lamar Miller and Andre Williams, both of them are starting this week, who are you starting? Adam.
Miller.
Steve.
Man, I like Andre Williams. I do. I don't know. I guess I fell in love with the matchup. So, but I already mentioned that as well when I said to start Jennings. So we already kind of established that I was high on Andre Williams.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess
right, so-
when it comes to Williams, I guess I fall a little bit more onto Joe's camp just because he hasn't done much and he's not great out of the backfield. I mean, Jennings is like the perfect back for that offense. Andre Williams just doesn't fit the offense. I don't think he's a terrible person or a terrible running back, but I just don't think he fits that offense very well.
Yeah, so I'll be anxious to say. I mean, I don't think he may not tank. I think he'll probably get you 6 or 7 points, and if he can throw in that touchdown, then you're going to be pretty happy. But I'm just not sure I can 100% guarantee it. And I'm just not high on him. So that's why I'm saying if Jennings doesn't play, bench him. Andre Williams, that is. You should definitely bench Jennings if he doesn't play.
Okay. Do you want to make up a second guy, or are we just gonna?
I'll go with Ben Roethlisberger. I looked at 2 stats today.
What were they?
Off the top of my head, I don't have anybody right off the top of my head. If I had to, I think I would probably talk a little bit about what Steve talked about with the Eagles offense. And particularly, obviously we talked about you're starting McCoy, you're starting Macklin, so I'm not going to tell you to bench them. But you may be in a case where you've been streaming quarterbacks, and Sanchez has been a guy over the last few weeks you've liked. I think that if you have a better option, I would really roll them out. So if I had to pick a second low one, I'm going to go with Sanchez.
Yeah, I almost put Sanchez on my low list until I saw that over-under. I just didn't think it was a sure bet. I was trying to pick the best bet, but I think I would agree with that he could very well put up a bad game. But I mean, he could get some garbage yardage and stuff like that, but I think he's going to turn the ball over a couple times and lose you some points.
What surprised me is what you guys just talked about with the over-under. I wouldn't have expected that. The fact that the over-under is that high actually gives me a little bit more confidence that the Eagles can win this game, because I didn't think it would be that high of a scoring game. But because I think if it stays of a low-scoring game, I think that's obviously in the favor of the Seattle Seahawks. But so who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But if right off the top of my head, if I'm picking a second low, Sanchez would be that guy.
Well, from what I'm looking at, Seattle has only given up over 20 points to 2 quarterbacks all year. Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning, and that was week 2 and 3. And they haven't given up over 10 points to a quarterback in over 3 weeks. So,
okay, well, I feel like it's a pretty safe bet on my part today.
Good pick.
Good pick.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey everybody, Ben Beck from Next Level, inviting you to join myself and Adam Gorey every Sunday for another episode of the Showcast. We bring you the best stories in pop culture, the newest stories in film and television, as well as movie reviews, what's going to be released in DVD, as well as coming to the box office for the weekend, and much, much more. All you have to do is search Next Level Radio under the iTunes Store and subscribe, or simply go to our website, www.nextlevelradioonline.com, and you can find our current shows as well as all of our past shows right there on the website. So we hope you join us every Sunday for another new episode of the Showcast.
Hi, this is Chris Gear from the awesome new FX show You're the Worst, and you are listening to Next Level Radio.
He was a no one, a 0-0. Now he's a hunter. He's a hero.
Prime time fantasy football's 0 to hero.
0 to hero, just like that.
All right, let's recap last week's 0 to heroes first. I had Calvin Johnson. I said he should be a shoo-in, and sure enough, he was. I think he was like the second or third highest scoring wide receiver other than DeAndre Hopkins. He plays Tampa Bay this week. I don't think any of us need to even mention that you're not benching him at this point. Yeah. So Steve had Andre Ellington. We talked about him already. So let's go right into Joe with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb.
Yeah, Jordy Nelson did not have a lot of receiving receptions, I should say, only 2, but for 53 yards and a touchdown. And as we said, it doesn't matter how you get the points. He got enough points for you to probably have a pretty solid day. But as a Nelson owner, you may have been a little disappointed because you've been used to 20 points a week from him. But still not a bad day. And Cobb, his targets were there and his receptions were there, 85 yards, but was missing a touchdown. I think, again, with both of these, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time with either of them. They're playing against Atlanta. Not a tough matchup, I should say. And I think both guys are going to be in your lineup. And I think they're going to both have successful nights. So not much else to say on that.
Joe, between the two of them, who would you say gets more points this week?
And why does this matter?
You know why. Joe, what's your answer?
I would go with Steve. Who do you have
Jordy, baby.
on your team? Well, I actually
Jordy.
thought you maybe had Cobb because I think the answer is Jordy Nelson.
Damn
honestly.
it.
You never know. Hey, you never know. Devontae Adams had a great week last week, so
Yeah.
maybe Devontae Adams keeps it rolling. Yeah, I'm gonna go with neither. So just to piss you both off, Devontae Adams will be the big beneficiary.
For those of you listening who aren't aware, Steve and I play each other this week in our One Keeper League playoffs. And
we each only have the Green Bay receivers as our Monday night guys.
yeah. I thought about picking up Green Bay's defense just to have an extra Monday night in there, but I think I'm going to stick with Detroit against Tampa Bay.
In my one league, I'm going up. Both of our quarterbacks are playing Monday night. Unfortunately, I'm the guy who has Matt Ryan. So I'm going to.
Garbage points, baby.
You better be up 50 going into that game.
If I'm not up at least 50, I know I don't stand a chance.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go into this week's picks for 0 to hero. I have Kelvin Benjamin. I kind of touched on him a little bit earlier. They play at New Orleans. He's racking up targets, even though that doesn't always equate to catches, as you see with Cam Newton's inaccuracy. But the Saints are giving up the third most to wide receivers. Their defense just is not that great. Last time they faced the Saints, he did not have a good week. I think it was a Thursday night game, so it was a short week on prime time. It just did not turn out well. I think he could get some targets. He could get a touchdown. He could also even get some garbage time if New Orleans gets up enough. But, I mean, that division's a mess, so this could even be a closer game. And I just think Kelvin Benjamin bounces back. I think more times than not he's going to get you double-digit points. Joe, what do you think?
I don't agree.
Okay, Steve?
No, I
Any
don't.
Analysis with that? Or
Yeah. I'm going to go. It's the quarterback. I am so down on Cam Newton right now. And I think Kelvin Benjamin is as talented as any rookie wide receiver in the league right now. But I don't feel like he's consistent enough. And so I'm telling you to bench him, and he may go off this week. But then you put him in your lineup next week, and he's going to have 9 targets, but he's only going to have 2 receptions. I just don't think he's consistent right now. And it's all because of Cam Newton. So I'm not high on him at all.
Yeah, I don't really believe in Cam Newton either. It's nothing against Kelvin Benjamin. But I could also see him scoring because there could be points in this game. But I don't know if the hero status. So I guess what I'm saying is I could see it as a yellow type of thing.
Okay.
I just don't know that he's going to go off and score a bunch of points against the Saints when Cam Newton's the one throwing to him. And Cam Newton had a game where he went 10 for 28 this year. So I don't know how you can trust anybody like that.
I guess I feel
guy,
that I have been sticking with him since preseason, and I got to ride him into the playoffs. So
yeah, that's fair.
I respect
and he's been good most.
the captain goes down with his ship. You know what they say.
That's
Fair
right.
enough. My guy is Ryan Tannehill. Like I said, they're playing Baltimore. And like I mentioned earlier, I think this is how the Dolphins beat the Ravens, through the air rather than on the ground. We said that last week against the Jets, and we also mentioned how terrible that game was to watch and how terrible Tannehill was in that game. But that was a weird game. I didn't watch. The Jets ran it like 50 times, right? Like something
Yeah.
ridiculous like that.
It was an obscene
Yeah.
amount. I think it was like
I think
49.
Gino may have only threw the ball like 10 times.
Yeah, that's weird.
He still
so
threw a
it was
pick.
just a weird game. So yeah, and I would also assume that the Jets had all the possession if they're going to run it that many times. So Tannehill probably, he probably didn't play that well, but I think he has a bounce back week. It's another great week this week as far as matchup goes. I had a comment about Manziel written down, but he's not starting anymore, so it's enough of Manziel. So not only do I consider Tannehill's wife a hero, but I would also consider Ryan Tannehill himself a hero. So what do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I like Ryan Tannehill. He's definitely going to play better than that schmuck Rand Tannehill played last week. So I got to agree there. And like you said, I mean, they're going to throw on Baltimore. And you look at Phillip Rivers. Baltimore got Phillip Rivers off the schneid. I mean, Phillip Rivers was having a few bad weeks, and he went up for 29 points. So I think you see Ryan Tannehill do well. I think he's been a QB1. If you look at total points this year, I think he's just inside a QB1 range. I think he's like top 12. So if you're in a 12-team league, he's been a QB1 all year, and I think he's going to be a QB1 this week. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both your assessment, especially Steve's assessment on Ryan Tannehill's wife. So I think last week was just an anomaly. He's been very good this year, and I think against Baltimore, where they're going to struggle to run the ball, he's going to put up some points, and he may even be a beneficiary. One thing that a lot of people forget about Tannehill is that he does run a little bit, so he may pick you up an extra point or two just running the ball himself if he's asked to scramble. So I like that a lot. My zero to hero this week, he wasn't a total dud last week. He had, I think, 7.5 points, but I'm going to go with Dez Bryant playing against Chicago tomorrow night at Chicago, and it's for the same reasons like that I like Tony Romo. I think Chicago's somewhere in the top 10 or 12 at points given up to wide receivers, so they're not quite as bad as the quarterbacks, but obviously if the quarterback's playing well, a receiver's going to be playing well, and he's really their main guy there. So if Tony Romo has a big night like I'm expecting him to, Dez Bryant's also going to have a big night on that. So, Adam, Dez Bryant, what are your thoughts for tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean, he's this week's Calvin Johnson. You know what I mean? I mean, you're not going to keep him down too long. So I got to agree. I'm not going to disagree with Dez Bryant. You kidding me?
Yeah, I think I also fall in the camp where you can start pretty much anybody that's in this game. There'll be a lot of points in this game, I would think. So I would agree with you as well for a bounce back.
Let's go to Don't Buy the Hype then. Let's go to last week's results. I had Eddie Lacy. I gave myself an orange because it's kind of between yellow and red, I guess. He had 11.5 points, which isn't exactly like a huge game. 21 catches for 98 yards, 2 catches for, or 21 attempts, I should say, for 98 yards, 2 catches for 17 yards. Without those 2 catches that he averages, like I mentioned last week, he would have probably got me like a green or something. But still not a great game compared to, if you look at what he's been doing. So, I was close. I wasn't far off. But he plays Atlanta. You got to run him out there. I guess you both can probably agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Steve, how about your guy last week?
Yeah, I had Ryan Matthews. He scored another touchdown, which I didn't think he was going to do. But other than that, he had 40 yards on the ground and 6 yards receiving. That's good for a yellow because of that touchdown. So this week, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, they're the Sunday night game against New England. They're at home against New England this week. So what do you guys think about Ryan Matthews going up against the Patriots this week?
That's a tough one because he's still only getting 13 touches, and that could be because of his injury history. So, I mean, he's going to be touchdown dependent, I think, for you. So, you might have to run him out there as a flex. I'm okay flexing him if you don't have any better options, but they are also falling into the home dog at night category, so you never know with that game.
There you go.
Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think actually Ryan, he's probably in my book a low end number 2, but much better. I feel much better if he's your flex.
Yeah.
So I think we've mentioned it too many times at this point with the running back situation. That may be your only option. So But I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and he has the ability to maybe catch something out of the backfield. So we'll see what happens. But I think a flex is where I'd feel best, but a low-end number 2 wouldn't be bad either. I went with Latavius Murray last week, and he did not play. I'm not exactly sure what his status is. I didn't really do any research into what he's
been
doing
cleared.
because he has been cleared.
He
Okay,
has
so I'm
been
going to
cleared.
stick to what I had said earlier is upcoming matchups, and this is why I think I said this last week that I wasn't sure he was going to play, but I was saying don't buy the hype long term because of his matchup. I know he's got San Francisco. He has I still think he has a game against St. Louis in there, so he's got a bunch of tough matchups. So I know you're excited about him because of what he did against Kansas City, who's tough against running backs. But if I were you, keep him on your bench this weekend. And if he goes off against San Francisco, I will be the first person next week to tell you how wrong I was. But rest of season, I'm not high on him at all.
Steve, I'll let you go first.
San Francisco's tough, man, but I like the way he runs. I think I mentioned it last week. So I think if he's going to play, then they're going to roll out their young guys. And I think he's just going to get some opportunities to put up the points. It's tough to trust, though, on a playoff week. I don't know that I would trust him on a playoff week, and I would certainly think that you'd have other options that are more trustworthy than a rookie who's only played in 2 games than for a playoff week. So I think it's tough to roll him out, but I don't mind the matchup. If you're desperate, I don't mind the matchup.
Yeah, if you're like an 8 seed going against a 1 seed, you're probably going to need to find some points somewhere. You know what I mean, like a high upside person somewhere, and he's got that. Tony Sperano did apparently say today he's not going to be utilized as a workhorse going down the stretch, whatever that means. The rest of the running backs are just terrible, though, so I got to imagine he at least leads that backfield and carries as he is going to play. They can't rely on Carr, so I don't really know what to do with him this week. I mean, I could see him being like a RB3 or a flex if you need him, but yeah, I guess I kind of am leaning towards Joe this week, changing my tune a little bit from last week, just not sure what to do with him yet. But you know what, I'm probably going to end up playing him because I have him and I want to see what he can do, and I got nothing to lose. So let's go to this week.
Except for your playoff week.
Right, but I'm honestly, I'm looking at my flex spot here, and it's between basically, and Steve, you are not allowed to comment on this because it's the one where I play you, but it's basically between him, Colston, Garcon, and Michael Floyd. So a bunch of bad options. So you know what I mean? I think Latavius Murray has the highest upside of those guys.
Ooh.
Colston has a better matchup, but I just think Murray has the highest upside.
I'll be honest, I personally, and this is just me, I would go with Colston. I just don't think Murray's. We've seen Murray do that one time.
Right, but you're not in the playoffs.
Shots fired.
Go Murray. I think Murray's the guy you would go with. Right the rest of the season.
You say once, but actually he did have, I don't remember, the game before the game where he actually had the huge one. He still had, I think, 40 yards on 4 carries or something like that. He's been running well.
So it's averaging 10 yards a carry. Big whoop.
That's pretty good.
Okay. That is pretty good, I guess.
Big whoop. And the week after that, he averaged 30 yards a carry. Big whoop.
Big whoop.
Yeah, big whoop.
This guy sucks.
Show me another guy who does that.
This guy's garbage. Let's go on to this week's picks.
By the way, that's going to be a new segment next week. It's going to go Big Whoop.
Big Whoop.
Instead of Don't Buy the Hype, we're going to call it Big Whoop.
Yeah, let's do that. Dante Moncrief, Big Whoop. Yeah, at Cleveland this week. He played on less than 50% of the snaps. He only had 4 targets. The Browns are not going to give up big plays like the Redskins. I don't know how many Redskins games you guys have seen this year, but I feel like every time I see them, they're giving up big plays down the field. Cleveland's not going to do that. Their secondary is much better, so I'm on Dante Moncrief. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree just because of the number of targets he's getting. I think that he's somebody, if we have anybody listening who's in a dynasty league or even a keeper league where you get to keep a couple more players, maybe he's somebody you want to pick up and just stash on your roster as a possibility because Reggie Wayne's getting up there in age and he may be, who knows what he's going to be around next year. And he could be, I have a feeling he's going to be one of the guys we're talking about as a possible breakout next year. But I agree, right now, you're not going to be putting him in your lineups in your first playoff week.
Darn it. I like Dante Moncrief. But he's falling under the Latavius Murray category for me where you can't trust him in your first playoff week. So I'm going to agree with what Joe said. And I'm going to take another Colt, actually. Kobe Fleener had 127 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, but as
Big
everybody's saying, as of 2 minutes ago, big whoop. And he also left 10 more points on the board because he dropped them. Dropped them.
That might have been
Stonehand.
one of the worst drops I've ever seen.
Yeah. There was nobody within 30 yards of him, and it would have been a 30-yard touchdown. He dropped it. Point of the story is he's unreliable, just like every other tight end ever this year, but he's more unreliable than others. What makes him different than the other tight ends this week is he's a backup, and the starter, who is Dwayne Allen, is expected to play this week. So in all seriousness, I don't think Kobe Fleener has much upside left this week. So you can go ahead and look elsewhere to get your standard 4 tight end points this week. And I don't think Kobe Fleener is your guy. What do you think, Adam, with Kobe Fleener, another Colt at Cleveland?
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, my matchup with Steve this week, I must be the underdog of the century because I have Kobe Fleener as well. Riding
You're playing him?
I have to. Looking at the free agents of tight ends, there's nobody that really has any more upside or downside or any side. Like even
circles.
Even when Dwayne Allen was playing, he still would get 5, 6, and sometimes a touchdown in there and get like 10 points. So if there is going to be a second tight end on any team, for me, it's an Andrew Luck team. I think they just use their tight ends a lot, and they use a lot of 2 tight end sets. So I'm not going to disagree with you because I still think he could have a single-digit week easily.
Well, that would make him a tight end.
Yeah, but I'm just saying with tight ends, like you said, none of them are reliable. When Jimmy Graham gets 0 targets, I mean, it's a crapshoot. You might as well just put somebody in there and pray.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that, Adam, I did like what you said, and it could end up benefiting you, is that Kobe Fleener's had a couple successful weeks even when Dwayne Allen was playing, but I just think that I agree that he's not going to be what he was the last few weeks. And just to comment, that drop was unbelievable. It truly was. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that in the NFL. I mean, he couldn't have been more. I've seen drops, but at least there was somebody close. I mean, this looked like he was out on the field by himself. But anyway,
the ball was underthrown.
Sure.
Come on, are you serious?
Stanford.
All right, good. I think you were serious. Adam, I really feel bad that you're forced to have to start Kobe Fleener and Latavius Murray this week. I mean, that's
Kobe Fleener is the reason I have to start Latavius Murray this week.
Yeah, that's right.
And
probably true.
schmucks with Dwayne Allen picking up Kyle Rudolph is another reason I have to start him.
At 7 in the morning.
At 7 o'clock in the morning. I did get sandbagged. Who would you rather me play? Him, Charles Clay, Michael Rivera, Jermaine Gresham, Scott Chandler, Eric Ebron?
Ebron, baby. My very
Yeah.
first show number 1, I said Eric Ebron was the best thing since sliced bread.
You stop
Yeah.
it. But you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I don't think I have any worse of a chance with
No, probably
Kobe
not.
Fleener.
No, probably not. So,
Well, who's your guy?
We'll get into my guy. I had Ryan Fitzpatrick. Big whoop. All right, so he had the
6
last
touchdowns,
count.
big
I
whoop.
think he's still throwing right now for another touchdown. Now I think there's going to be a lot of people going into your fantasy playoffs that maybe picked him up this week, and they see this matchup against Jacksonville. No one expects him to throw another 6 touchdowns, even against Jacksonville. But one thing I was actually surprised when I looked up on Yahoo, and I actually put that in our email with the source because I just feel like no one's going to believe it. But they give up the tweet. They give up the tweet. So that's why no one's going to believe it because they don't know what tweet is. They gave up the 12th least points to quarterbacks this year, which I'm not even sure how that's possible.
That's because teams get up big on them and just run the ball.
Yeah, but Jacksonville hasn't been terrible against the run either.
No, that's true.
So it's really I'm not exactly sure how those numbers are working out, but that's according to Yahoo. But I just don't think you should feel comfortable going with Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. But I will have a question. Now, unfortunately, Ryan Fitzpatrick is somebody I'm not picking up. But we both kind of talked about Matt Ryan. We're going to talk about in a minute, so this can kind of lead into it this week. If you had the opportunity to start Matt Ryan at Green Bay on Monday night or Fitzpatrick at Jacksonville, who are you starting this week?
I got Matty Ice. Garbage points all day. Their whole second half might be garbage points.
Yeah, I would stick with Matt Ryan.
Okay, I feel the same way too, but I just felt with matchups and the way Ryan has been playing that maybe you guys are obviously experts. That's why we're on this podcast.
Aficionados, yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if somebody was trying to get cute and tried to throw in Fitzpatrick based on what he did last week in the matchup this week. But
Yeah,
I'm telling you, don't buy the hype. Big whoop.
I will say this though: if you were streaming guys and had it like Sanchez, I would play Fitzpatrick over Sanchez.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah.
I have Sanchez really low this week. I think Seattle is going to manhandle that.
So you would agree with Fitzpatrick over Sanchez as well?
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, did you see Fitzpatrick's kid on the?
Yes, kid is a genius.
Yeah, apparently it was fantastic. I didn't see it yet.
Didn't Fitzpatrick go to like Harvard or something?
He's a Harvard guy.
Yeah,
so.
he did.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get on to the our last part of the show that we haven't done in a while. Over under.
It's time for Over Under.
Since it's playoff week, we're going to give you each a player from each position and tell you if we think they're going to go over or under their projected points as of today, Wednesday. So let's start off with Steve's quarterback.
Yeah, I have Matty Ice, who we were just talking about. They're playing at Green Bay, and his projection, at least I was looking at Yahoo Standard League, is 17.5. So Monday night at Green Bay, 17.5, over under.
That's close. I'm gonna say just barely over, maybe by a point.
I call over.
Yep, I got the over
because of garbage points.
Clean sweep.
Wow, that's pretty bad when you're relying on garbage points, but
no.
Yeah.
I'll go next. I have Mark Sanchez versus Seattle, 15 points, over or under that.
Under.
I'm going to say over just because I find it hard to believe that a quarterback in the Chip Kelly offense is going to score less than 15 points.
Yeah, I'm going to say over as well, but not by a lot.
No.
Has
it could be like
anybody
15.1.
Has anybody done the research to see how much, if he scored less than, he hasn't played that much this year, but he was really bad.
Joe, who you got? Yeah, I mean, he's, I'll check while Joe's talking about his over under.
I went with Ryan Tannehill versus Baltimore, 19.5 points projected. So, Steve, over under for Ryan Tannehill. I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
No, I really like Tannehill, but 19.5 is still a lot. I think that's pretty close onto the number. I'm going to go just under. I think he's in the 18-19 range for me this week.
I'm going over. And by the way, Sanchez only had under 15 one time, and that was the game that he came in the second quarter for Foles.
Oh, good.
Well, I don't know how long it would take, Adam. What were just Nick Foles' fantasy numbers for most of his weeks? Because that's what I'm really relying it on. Just the fact that in a Chip Kelly offense, even when a quarterback struggles the way Nick Foles kind of did this year, he probably still put up okay fantasy numbers.
He put up under 15 twice.
Okay, who did he play those two games?
I don't know.
Wouldn't surprise me if it was
week 4 and week 5. Week 4 he only put up 6 points.
Was that the week no? Anyway, so okay, I'll still take the over. What did I say? Tannehill. I'm actually going to go with the over as well.
Oh.
All right, let's go on to the running backs. Wide receivers. Let's go to wide receivers.
Yeah, I got Mike Evans. They play at Detroit. And his projection is 10 for this week. So what do you guys think?
Steve is probably going to say under, so I'm going to say under as well just because of the matchup.
Under.
Yeah, I'm also going to say under. I thought you guys were going to say over, so that's why I picked it. Clean sweep.
I went matchup on it, yeah. I got Stedman Bailey at Washington, 7.5 points.
Over.
Over. I like Stedman Bailey. I said it a couple weeks ago, and I wish I knew what week I said it in because he stunk for like 2 weeks after that, but then started to pick it up.
I think you said it like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was a while ago. I'm going to go over as well. I thought one of you might go under, but yeah, I like him a lot too. And like I said, Washington gives up big plays.
All right, now I went with Jeremy Maclin versus Seattle, 6.5 points.
I got to go over.
Yeah, in the opposite of what I've been saying about the passing attack, but 6.5 is really low.
Yeah,
over.
Even if he gets a touchdown, I mean, that pretty much puts him over touchdown. Right there. Yeah.
I'm taking the under.
Wow. Whoa. You are completely wrong. Let's go to running backs.
I think Macklin's going to struggle. I think Matthews is going to get more of the garbage time points. making some cuts across the middle as the slot receiver. I think that's what's going to be more open to short intermediate passes rather than Jeremy Maclin. So I think Matthews can actually have an okay day. I'm not high on Maclin this week.
Look at him with the analysis. It's probably wrong, but
it's dead wrong. I heard some guy on TV say that.
let's go to the running backs.
Yeah, I have Frank Gore, who was mentioned earlier in the podcast. Oakland is the worst rushing defense against fantasy running backs this year. Frank Gore's projection is 10 because he's been poor the last few weeks, so it's a little bit of a combination. Over, under?
I'm going to go over.
I'm going to go over, and it's by like a tenth of a point. Like I think right at 10 is where he's probably going to be.
I think he goes over as well, which is another reason that I'm struggling with my wide receiver and flex positions in my fantasy lineup this week.
Well, DeAndre Hopkins putting up 34 points. I mean, can't argue with that. I have Jamal Charles at Arizona projected at 14.5 points. Over or under that?
How real is his injury? I don't know how real his injury is. I'm going to go
Apparently
under.
It's not a worry.
I'm taking a Vegas approach here because that seems really low for Jamal Charles, but there has to be a reason for it. So I'm going under.
I'm going over because I think Arizona is falling apart. So I think they're going to he'll be able to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, he practiced in full today. I'm not taking the Vegas approach because these projections are from Yahoo, and Yahoo's totally off the basis there. So I'm going to go over as well just because, like Joe said, Arizona's kind of falling apart. When Steven Jackson can put up 100 yards on you, I'm not worried about Jamal Charles' matchup there because they base that entire offense around him, essentially. Joe, who'd you have?
Trey Mason at Washington, projected for 13 points coming off that huge week last week.
I think, for me, that's
I'm going to go under.
Reactionary. Yeah, that's reactionary to what happened last week. I'm under as well on that.
Not by much.
I am also under.
Yeah, I'm at like 11 or 12 maybe, 10. But 13's a lot to project for him after just one big week like that. Yeah. Let's go to final one, tight ends.
Yeah, I got Kyle Rudolph, the guy that Adam wanted and couldn't get because somebody picked him up at 7:30 in the morning in our league.
When they already had a tight end.
They're playing the Jets this week, who have given up the most touchdowns to tight ends. And Kyle Rudolph's projection is right on a touchdown. If he can get a no-yard touchdown, his projection is six.
Yeah, I like him this week. I'm going over that.
Man, I think that is like the perfect number for him. I'll take the over. Maybe I'll have 30 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm going over as well. So another clean sweep.
I got Jason Witten at Chicago Thursday night. 8.5 points. Over or under that?
Ugh.
That's about 8 points too high, in my opinion. I'm going to take the under.
I'm going under as well.
I'll go over because you guys went under, and disagreeing makes good radio.
Look at that.
All right, and finally, Jimmy Graham versus Carolina, coming off his 0-target performance. He's projected for 12.5 points.
I'm going to go over because people won't stop talking if they get 0 targets.
I'm going under.
I'd take the over because I don't know if there's ever a time I wouldn't take the over with Jimmy Graham.
What if he was projected for 30 points?
Over.
Clearly that's
Vegas approach.
Yeah, Vegas approach. All right, well, that is it for everything for week number 14. Good luck in the first round of the playoffs if it is your playoff week. If your playoff week is next week, and you play into week 17, good luck. Hope you make it. Anything else from Joe?
If anyone's still listening, good luck to Adam and his wife. We're expecting their first child any day now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, maybe we'll have to record the podcast early or late next week. We'll see. Steve, anything else to add?
The Sixers are currently tied, so tonight could be the night. And that puts them only 3 wins behind the Detroit Pistons for all you haters out there.
And the Lakers, I think, only have 3 wins.
Yeah, I think the Lakers have 4. Yeah, 3 or 4.
And Lakers just lost again tonight, by the way.
Yeah.
Lakers have 5 wins.
On this tank, just get off it. You know what I mean? Give me a break.
Lakers have 5 wins.
Take that, anti-tankers.
Take that, Howard Eskin.
By the way, the Timberwolves are garbage too. They only have 4 wins.
I don't care who they beat. As long as they beat somebody.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're only 4 wins away from the Timberwolves, and they've lost every game. So what does that say?
But
all right. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Primetime Fantasy Football. Make sure you go to go to nextlevelradioonline.com. Check out Steve's blog, StevenRichards.net. You can follow us all on Twitter at AdamNextLevel, at SRichards31, at JoeyWebb32, or at NXT Level Radio. Tweet us your lineup questions. We'll get back to you. We'll see if we do a bold prediction this week. I know Joe skipped out on it last week. Steve and I both did one. I think Steve hit his too. So
Sure did.
I think that wraps it up. Good luck again this week, like we said, and we will see you for week number 15.
Thanks for listening to Primetime Fantasy Football. Send your questions in to primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. And make sure to check out our weekly rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com, and go to the Primetime Fantasy Football tab. We'll post the link on Twitter and Facebook at NXT Level Radio or facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline.